G'day, mate. 40 here. What a time for Donald Trump to have his town hall. All right. So yesterday, all right, he lost the civil case, all right, saying that he sexually assaulted and then libeled this woman. I mean, he he looked really bad in this lawsuit. And yet, Rich Lowry writes in Politico, why Trump can't lose. He's constructed a political force field against failures and scandals that would have failed any other politician. You notice that everybody exerts a force field, right? Some people exert, much more powerful force field than others. So Dennis Prager exerts a very powerful force field, right? Dennis Prager walks into the room than others, and everyone, takes notice, and it affects them, right? If you exert a powerful force field, has a profound effect on how other people treat you. So somehow there are women who never get sexually harassed. Like, people are too intimidated to say anything inappropriate, to push her boundaries, because you just know this is not someone you can push their boundaries. On the other hand, there are people early on in recovery who are always announcing what their boundaries are. And usually these people are struggling with boundaries. I have struggled with boundaries. When I first started regular psychotherapy in 1998, one of the first things my therapist did was give me a handout on boundaries, because I was very careless with how other people violated my boundaries. For example, I got a credit card in my name that I gave to a friend because his own credit reports were just so bad that he couldn't qualify for a credit card. So guess what? I get him credit card in my name, and he promises to pay me back every month. But does he pay me back every month? No, he does not. And so eventually, when he owes me about $500 and he hasn't paid me back, right, I get a little upset, and I cancel his credit card, and then he gets upset and he doesn't pay me back the $500, and it put, kind of a blow to our friendship. So then I would violate other people's boundaries. I was a little too aggressive verbally, sometimes, God forbid, physically. I remember once I was at a Friday night Shabbat dinner, 25 years ago, and I started talking to this woman in the kitchen, and she remembers I kind of backed her into a corner, and 8 years later, when she recounted the story, she'd have tears in her eyes. It was that traumatic. And so I remember once I stayed with someone in 1994, and I made a handful of long-distance phone calls, fairly brief, but I didn't ask his permission first, all right? I was careless about boundaries. So Donald Trump, all right, he's got this force field, and somehow he just keeps on trucking, right? You'd think that, all the setbacks he's had over the past few months, that he'd be going down in the polls, but no, he's going up in the polls. Like, no matter what happens, nothing seems to hurt him. And the verdict against Trump in the E. Jean Carroll defamation case, it looks like it can just be added to the list. I mean, does this guy ever lose? So, yeah, Tucker Carlson's back, but not for long. That's Richard Spencer's perspective.
Hello again. This is Richard, and this is another entry in my journal. I'm going to talk once again about Tucker Carlson. So Tucker has made news once again. He's back. We're back was, in fact, the tweet that he released this afternoon, and he included a video in which he recited yet more platitudes on about how the media just isn't fair and you're not getting the truth and things like that. He did say some true things, to be fair, about the media selecting facts to report on and so on. And the fact that Twitter as a platform is reactionary. It's simply commenting on the news that is relayed to people via cable news in many cases. All true. And he also announced that he will be continuing his show. That seems to be what he implied, is that he will have a show much like he did for the last 4 or so years on Fox News, but he will be doing it on a new platform, Twitter. I thought that Twitter had hired him as talent, much like Rumble hired Steven Crowder and Substack paid Matt Taibbi or something like that. But apparently that isn't quite the case. So Elon Musk tweeted a few minutes or so afterwards saying that there is no contract with Tucker. So he is using the Twitter platform just like anyone else will. And he could get subscribers and monetization and so on. So that's interesting. So Twitter isn't quite becoming a content.
Yeah, it's interesting how quick Elon Musk was to back away and to emphasize that he's not doing anything special with Tucker. He hasn't made any special deal with Tucker. Initially, it seemed like Tucker and Elon were just combining their resources and going to war together. And then Elon Musk, did he pants Tucker? Because initially it sure sounded like Tucker had some sweet special deal with Elon Musk. Turns out he's just got the same deal that you and me have. Is it? Yeah, same deal that me have. That you and I have. Sorry.
Producer, as I thought they might, a publisher. They are remaining a platform, but there's no doubt that there were some, text exchanged or some behind-the-scenes dealings between Elon and Tucker. But regardless, he will be on the platform and acts like any other creator. And I think that's really his ultimate problem. And I don't think Tucker will go very far with this. And I think he will increasingly fade into irrelevancy, at least with regard to where he was previously. Now, of course, I'm sure he can produce a lot of shows. I'm sure these can be successful. But I don't think he will ever be the figure that he once was. And I'll explain that a little bit later. Now, Tucker also did some things today. He made some news in some other ways. And he is threatening a lawsuit against Fox News. He is claiming a couple of things, some of which I think are accurate, some of which I think are a bit dubious. What is accurate is that Fox is, in effect, in breach of its contract by posting videos that are meant to demean him. And it does seem likely, I don't know for sure, but it seems likely that Fox News was the one who leaked some text messages that might have gone to trial. I think they were actually suppressed from the trial, but anyway, some text messages, and these include the "that's not how white men fight" line, in which Tucker expressed those sentiments, but then also expressed how the fact that rooting on white people vis-a-vis Antifa is actually soul-destroying on some level. Fox News is likely behind the leaks of some of these behind-the-scenes videos of Tucker just being very casual, maybe being a bit blunt or crass on occasion, but not really doing anything all too terrible in my mind. In fact, those other videos he leaked made him seem, relatable or cool or something. Perhaps he should thank Fox News. The other thing that he claimed that I find pretty dubious, to be honest, is that firing Tucker was part of the Dominion lawsuit. So there was some agreement, I don't know if it was on paper or not, that for Fox News to pay Dominion $750 million, but then not fully admit wrongdoing, which they didn't. They didn't come out and flatly say, it was all a lie, we knew it was a lie, and we recklessly and maliciously spread a lie. Fox News did not say that, even though that was implied, I guess, by their massive settlement with Dominion. Tucker claims that someone on the board told him that he was fired as part of the settlement. Now, I'm not sure I believe this. I'm wondering if this were, I don't know, I just don't fully believe that something like that took place. Now, it does raise the question of why exactly was Tucker fired. I think there were many different reasons, some of which might have been the, that's not how white men fight text, some of which might be related to Rupert Murdoch's calling off his marriage with, I don't know, which is his third, fourth, fifth wife, one of those, because she was a little bit too Christian-y for his taste, a little bit too wacky, and she was making claims like Tucker Carlson is a sent from God or a Messiah.
I mean, that's absolutely hilarious that Rupert Murdoch canceled his forthcoming nuptials with this woman and then takes away her favorite TV show.
Of some kind. It was probably a combination of different factors. I'm just not sure I believe that Dominion forced him out and that was part of the settlement. I find that dubious, but we'll find out. There's also the issue of, is Tucker also breaking the contract? Now, Tucker could say Fox broke it first, but is Tucker also breaking the contract by starting a new program? Well, is being a content creator on social media, is that something that was in the contract? I don't know. It might have been. Tucker.
I mean, does Fox really want to get dragged through Discovery, where all the text messages and emails of their executives get brought into the public eye? I don't think Fox wants to go through that again. I can't imagine that Fox has a strong case against Tucker.
Would go on other people's podcasts, but he wasn't actively making content. He didn't have.
So anyway, Richard's main point here is that Tucker's second act will be his slide into irrelevancy. So I don't think so. I think Tucker Carlson's at the absolute height of his powers, and I'm not endorsing him. I think he's a demagogue. I think he's frequently irresponsible. I think he doesn't care about whether or not what he's saying is true. So I think there are many valid criticisms of Tucker, and also he is tremendously entertaining and hilarious.
His own podcast say. So we'll see. Regardless, I think non-compete clauses are, I guess, understandable from a corporation's perspective, but not something I'm too fond of. I hope Tucker, he's a citizen. He can go out there and speak his truth. But I ultimately don't think he will be terribly successful at this. And I think people who claim that he is going to be, bigger than ever and this will free him and all that kind of stuff, I think those people are a bit delusional, and they misunderstand the dynamic at place. And in a way, they misunderstand why they themselves liked Tucker. So let me explain. I am fond of using the phrase, a feature, not a bug. And I invented that phrase. That's probably what Trump would say. No, I didn't invent it, but I'm fond of using it. And, I use it in particular with Trump, where, a lot of liberal types will look at something like, say, the Alvin Bragg lawsuit in New York over hush money payments and say, like, oh, well, no one could vote for him knowing that he's indicted on both misdemeanors and criminal charges. Well, that kind of a criminal charge like that, Trump being arraigned, it's kind of a feature and not a bug of the whole Trump movement, in the sense that he can flip that around and say, no, this is part of the great witch hunt against me. They all hate me. They went.
Well, this case really does seem like a witch hunt against Donald Trump. So looking at Twitter, statute of limitations sexual assault in New York is typically 5 to 7 years. New York even has a 20-year period for civil claims of sexual assault. But that was not enough to get Donald Trump. So Jean Carroll's claims go back to the mid-1990s. So New York in 2022 amended the law to provide an unlimited statute of limitations for civil claims of sexual assault and provided a 1-year window where pre-existing claims could be litigated. That's where Jean Carroll comes in, and her lawsuit was funded by a Democratic activist who filed her claim against Trump. In that limited window, even a liberal New York jury wouldn't find Trump liable for rape. People paying attention know what this truly is, another political attack to try to harm Trump before the 2024 election. That seems pretty accurate analysis.
To destroy your favorite president, all that kind of stuff. So in a way, the bug is the feature. And you can go, I think this phrase fits Trump to a T for almost everything about him. He was popular because he was vulgar, not despite it. He was popular because he wasn't a politician with an agenda, but because he was actually a reality show star who would go on worldwide wrestling events and make a jackass of himself. All of those bugs were, in fact, features. So that's what I mean by a phrase like this. And so why am I using that phrase vis-a-vis Tucker and Fox? So Fox News has a lot of problems. And in fact, you can look at it and say that it is a dying business that is going to be sunset within, say, my lifetime. It's probably going to be around another 25 years, but its ultimate business model is not sustainable. People are moving away from cable in general. They are cutting the cord. They're not necessarily even saving money, but they are moving to Netflix, to HBO Max, to...
Yeah, well, people want something more relatable, something more intimate, something more daring, something that tells more truth, something that's not as stiff, something that's not as narrow, something that has, a little broader range of expression and debate. So, yeah, I don't know why almost anyone would watch, Fox News when you've got much more intelligent material, online, such as this show.
YouTube, etc. They're getting on-demand content or subscription-based content from the web. Surely you've heard about this trend, as it is massive. Fox is live television. Now, Fox has made little forays into Fox Nation and things like that. According to Tucker, those weren't particularly successful. And so you have this ancient audience that is still watching Fox News. And it's a very real thing. I mean, I remember going...
Look, why are we here? All right. Are we here as a substitute for having a life? Or are we here to supplement what's already an exciting, successful, vibrant, diverse, thrilling, connected, intimate, moving, fully human in the best sense life? So I think for many people, the internet, live streams, talk radio, that these serve as a supplement to their real life. It's an opportunity to have some fun, to connect with people with common interests, to learn some things, and it's just a healthy supplement to a life well lived. Then for other people, it's an opportunity to substitute for normal human connection. And of course, this is a poor substitute for normal human connection. So if you use live streams, YouTube, talk radio, the internet as a supplement to real life connection, then that's a wonderful thing. If you're using it as a substitute, not such a great thing. So let's get a little bit of perspective on it from a psychologist here, Alan Berger.
False self is this self that we've developed thinking that that was somehow going to be our solution in life. And that false self tends to take three different paths.
Okay, so I got frustrated with who I was, and I kind of wanted to flush who I was down the toilet and build a new self. I guess you could call it a false self, and construct something great with my accomplishments. Then I got really sick at age 22. I wasn't able to accomplish anything anymore. So I wanted to accomplish something great by connecting with Dennis Prager, by connecting with Judaism, by devoting my life to God. But both of those were kind of fleeing who I really am. And so I can do this YouTube show as a supplement to a vibrant and diverse connected life, or I can try to use these live streams as a substitute for having a life. I can do these streams to construct a false self, or to build and develop and enhance my real self.
And each of these paths, and this was Dr. Karen Horney's work, are related to a certain appeal. So there are three things that the path appeals to that we take, or the three different paths, and the things they appeal to is the appeal of mastery, the appeal of love, or the appeal of freedom. And so early on in our life, when we're...
Yeah, so initially I tried to construct my false self on mastery. I was going to become great. Then I got sick, so I tried to construct my false self on love, love of Judaism. And that didn't really work out, because wherever I went, there I was.
We're trying to solve our basic anxiety that we're not going to be loved, we're not going to be accepted, we're not going to belong. Well, we choose one of these general pathways as our solution. Every one of us has a bit of all of these in us that are part of just who we are, and we'll talk about that more, but one becomes our dominant solution. So let's talk about the appeal of mastery. So if I take the appeal of mastery, I think the way I'm going to be loved and accepted is by being the best at everything I do. And it's not just the best, but it turns into I'm going to be perfect. And so I'm going to get the best grade in class, right? I'm going to do the best on it. If my pursuit is athleticism, I'm going to be the best athlete. I'll be the best tennis player. I'll be the best student. I'll be the best child in the family. I'll be better than all my other siblings, right? I am going to be best. And if I'm best, then I'm going to ensure my love. I'm going to ensure that I'm going to be accepted, and I'm going to ensure that I belong in the world. Now, and the second path is this appeal of love. If someone just loves me, I'll be okay. So this path is about...
This speaks to me. This is what I experienced. This is how I understand what I experienced. I initially wanted to create this false self based on accomplishment and mastery. That didn't work out. Then I tried to build my false self on romantic and erotic adventures and adventures in Torah. He's singing my song. He's telling my story.
Totally erasing yourself, because to be loved when you're pursuing this appeal of freedom means that you have to meet every need that your partner has in order for them to love you.
And so I would inevitably put way too much weight on all of my relationships, all right? Because that's where I was getting my meaning in life. Didn't work out.
And Dr. Karen Horney called it the self-effacing solution, because you're throwing yourself away, you're erasing yourself and saying, I'll be whatever you want me to be. I'll be your genie in a bottle, baby. Just rub me. Just love me. I'll do whatever you want me to do. So there's a total abdication of your own personal needs, and there's a what? A total focus on the other person's needs. Now you can see as we go through these things, the appeal of mastery, well, certain parts of you, we're going to call them essential parts to achieving that particular appeal, are going to be emphasized in your person. So the appeal of mastery is your intelligence, right? You're going to really rely on your intelligence, or if you're an athlete, your physical skills. That's what's going to be pushed forward. Your confidence. I'm the best at what I do. What's going to happen to the part of you that's doubting? You're going to reject it, right? If you're pursuing the appeal of mastery, any self-doubt, you're going to hate yourself for that. You can't have any doubt, not if you're going to be the best. Now, if you're going to take this appeal of love, right, and you pursue that particular thing, then all the parts of you that are responsive, that are interested in other people, that show empathy for them, that will mobilize yourself to meet your needs, all those are going to be emphasized and become essential parts of your personality. The parts of you that are going to want to speak up for yourself and be assertive and express your own needs, what are you going to feel about that? You're not going to do that, because then you risk.
Yeah, so I would be afraid to assert myself because I didn't want to rock the boat, lose the relationship. So one friend said, you seem to have all the characteristics of like a beaten house husband. You just allow these women to just walk right over you. Because I was getting my meaning and purpose and sustenance in life from my romantic and erotic adventures.
Risk what? Not being loved. Okay. So our personality is going to be very much shaped by which of these paths we go on. So we talked about, one was the appeal of mastery, the appeal of love. The third one is the appeal of freedom. We just don't want to be bogged down with anything. So what we have to do is develop an attitude of being needless and wantless. We give up on life, we resign, and that's at the basis of this one, to have any kinds of needs or aspirations, whatever. We're willing to go through life and just get by. We're not going to get too upset about anything. We're not going to feel anything. We're not going to get too invested in anything. It's the classic person. It's the classic person that has, thrown in the towel, right? That they just go through life. They're the classic underachiever. They have so much more potential than that, but they're not.
Right. They are the classic underachiever, hiding their talents. They've given up on life.
Going to mobilize themselves to do it, because that means they're going to get invested. And what do they risk? Being hurt, being disappointed, being frustrated.
Right. To achieve, to succeed, and to prosper, you have to be willing to bring your soul out of hiding. So that's what we're about on this show. We're about bringing souls out of hiding.
See, so if you have the appeal of freedom, you're not going to want to feel anything. You're going to want just life to be okay all the time. You're not looking for great. You're just looking for okay. Life is just going to be okay. I'll settle for okay. As long as it's okay, I'm fine. So that person will not have any aspirations. So what will they do? What parts of themselves will they throw away? They'll throw away any part that has any need or want whatsoever. Any part that's going to attach or be interested in anything is going to be thrown out the window. So that's what we did early on in our life. Now, we did that to do what? To ensure we're going to be loved and accepted. I changed myself to manipulate you, to get you to feel a certain way, because when this happened, I was so dependent on how other people felt about me to be okay. This happened in our childhood.
Right. So if you don't have a strong sense of self, you're twist in the winds of live streaming. You know how tempting it is to try to say what the audience wants to hear, right? That's audience capture. You know how difficult it is to stand up and say things that everybody, in the chat is rejecting, denying, making fun of. You know how difficult it is to, stand for what you believe is right and true if you're getting so much of your meaning and sustenance in life from, developing a crowd, developing an audience, and telling it what it wants to hear.
Not about the turning last time. We're turning away from the false self. We're turning towards a true self. We're making this commitment to a new way of life. So here's the charge again. But once again, a commitment.
So each step, starts a charge. The next step satisfies. So third step, we turn our life over to God. Fourth step, we satisfy that by making a complete and thorough moral inventory.
Without some kind of a manifestation of action becomes just an empty promise. And we're all familiar with empty promises. How many times I say, I'll stop drinking. This is it. I've had it. I'm not going to drink again. I'm not going to use again. I'm not going to do this. Or I'm not going to do that. Our lives have been filled with these empty promises. And until we somehow mobilize ourselves to take a specific action, then we are not going to be able to discover this new way of life. Now, step 4 is that invitation, right? We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So I want to start by talking about that this is the first tangible evidence that we are going to have of our commitment to discovering a new possibility in our life. And it's tangible because now we're really being asked to do something. The other steps that we've just made a decision, right? We came to believe, we admit it. Those are things that we've done. Now we're asked to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves and to sit down and put pen to paper and really get honest with ourselves like we've never been honest before. This is the way that this step is described in the big book. He goes, Bill, this is Bill's writing, of course. Now we launched out on a course of vigorous action. The first step, which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us.
Right. So the most noble goals, the most sublime philosophies and theologies, right, the most rigorous religious commitments don't mean anything unless you start cleaning house, coming to terms with the damage that you've done, taking a long, hard look at how your selfishness has hurt other people, and beginning to clean up the wreckage of the past by making amends to the people you've harmed.
That's Bill's word, that have been blocking us. We're going to see that one of the things that we need to face that's been blocking us in terms of the achieving emotional sobriety is our emotional dependency. That's what's been blocking us from being able to stand on our own 2 feet, from being able to.
Right. And so if you're doing live streams and you're emotionally dependent, all right, it's going to compromise your commitment to truth, to whatever you believe is good, whatever you're trying to do, because you're going to be so desperate, for that emotional sustenance from your audience.
To finally mature in life. So we need to have a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom. So we had to get down to causes and conditions. So that's what we're facing in this step. We're facing causes and conditions. And before we talk about how we're going to face those things, I want to spend some time now discussing our resistance to working these steps, because that has to be addressed. You cannot work these steps without becoming aware of the part of you that doesn't want to work them. We're asked to make a searching and fearless moral inventory. Searching and fearless. How come the word fearless has been inserted in this step? Why didn't we just say a searching moral inventory? What is this fearless? How come we have to be courageous in this effort? Well, this is what we're up against. And this is a very important thing to become aware of. We have to be fearless because we are going to now have a stark confrontation with our false self. Now, as we've discussed it before, our false self is based on a tyranny of the shoulds. It's an idealized self. It says, this is the way, this is the blueprint of who I have to be okay. And in that blueprint are all of these demands about how I'm supposed to be. And this is an idealized self. So this means if I'm this way, absolutely this way, I'll be okay.
Right. So you see people going online with their e-personality, creating this false self, trying to be a keyboard warrior or, live streaming star, be all sorts of things that they're not. Right. So you can come to live streaming from a position of, vulnerability and frustration with your real life, from failure in your real life and inability to connect in your real life, like a series of dissatisfactions and failures and humiliations. Right. And then you can try to, create this, brand new e-personality who is just, so tough talking.
And if I'm anything less than this, I'm not. So when I adhere to the demands that this blueprint of my false self have created, then I feel a false pride. Look at who I am. I'm great. I'm perfect. When I'm not is the important thing here. And this is where the fearless comes in. When I am not who I should be, it unleashes self-hate. It unleashes the experience of what we call the despise.
Right. So you sense with many people on YouTube and live streamers and podcasters, you just sense the intense self-hatred that they must feel because they're perpetuating this false e-personality.
Self. I now see parts of myself that I can't tolerate, that I hate. I'm not supposed to be this way. And God forbid anybody sees them. They're not going to love me. I'm not going to belong. I'm not going to be okay. The basic anxiety that was resolved when we adopted this blueprint to this false self is now going to be re-experienced in our working step 4. We are going to confront our despised self. We are going to see ourselves in a way that we haven't wanted to. Every one of us is guilty of selective inattention. We only see the things that we want to see. We don't see who we really are. We see ourselves in our idealized image. And that's a serious problem because as soon as you see these other parts of you that aren't okay, you're going to hate yourself. And when someone's despised self becomes all that they can see, when they have no hope that they can be their false self, that's when people decide to kill themselves. We call it the anti-self. It gets so big and so strong, and that they despise themselves to such a degree. The conclusion is the world would be better off without me. This is the only way my pain is going to stop. So confronting this despised self is such an important part of this experience, which is why Bill called us to be fearless. If we stop, if we don't confront this despised self in this journey that we're taking, we are not going to be able to be rigorously honest. Now, it helps if what you understand when you're confronting this is that the false self, this despised self, is just a creation. It's a construction of the false self. It's not really. It's, that's where there's this other part of it. A lot of the ideas of who I'm supposed to be and who I'm not, it's a big lie. It's based on a myth that only certain things are okay for me to be, when all of me is okay to be. I'm a human, being. So we're being confronted now with this existential reality of who we are.
And a little another
point that said, we go back in the past to learn as much as we can from it, and then we get the hell out of there. What he didn't include on his button, we get the hell out of here and we get grounded in right now, and we use all that we've learned from the past to live a different experience right now, right here, right now. That's where recovery shows up, in what you're doing today. You do not have to ask someone if they're in recovery or not. You can just watch their behavior. And if they are living their recovery, you will see it in what they're doing, not what they're saying. Herb Kagan said that there was an old Catholic saint that used to say, everywhere I go, I preach the gospel. And sometimes I use words, right? I love that line. I love that. Everywhere I go, I preach the gospel. Sometimes I use words, because it's not the words that communicate what's going on. It's who we are. It's how we live our life. And that's what step 10 is about. Now we're taking everything we've learned and we're plugging it in order to learn how to deal with ourselves when we get upset and disturbed. And what we do now is we're not blaming anybody else. We continue to take personal inventory. And when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. We take care of it right now, right here, right now. Promptly admitted it right at this moment. Now, when do we know we're wrong? Well, Bill had a clue for that. If you read the 12 and 12 in step 10, he says, it's a spiritual axiom. Every time I am emotionally disturbed, there's something wrong with me, no matter the cause.
Okay, let me fast forward here. An amazing dialogue that he does here.
We're talking about this emotional sobriety form. I asked you guys to fill them out. I said, does anybody want to volunteer and talk about what they put on their form? And you put your hand up. And so here we are now in front of all your colleagues. I mean, there's 300 social workers out here.
That's it?
It's just 300. It probably feels like a lot more than that right now. But, what I want to acknowledge, first of all, look, it takes a lot of courage for you to come up, because I imagine this is going to get pretty personal. So what, as you know, that first column is, what's the event that upset you? What happened?
My wife just won't do the dishes.
She won't do the dishes. Mm-hmm. Tell me what.
It's not really, that sounds
really
it's
simple,
petty,
but there's more to it. I know that.
Okay, so, look, I work a lot, all right? And she doesn't work right now. We have a 6-month-old daughter. Mm-hmm. And I ask that when I come home. I mean, I'm talking like, if you add up the commute that I do to go to work because of where we live, right? I work probably about 11, 12 hours a day. So I come home and there's dishes in the sink. Who's fucking doing them?
Right.
Me. Yeah. And all I ask that she does throughout the day. I mean, I'm talking like,
okay,
I pay the bills.
caller.
She can do whatever she
Welcome.
wants.
What's
And I
going
just,
on,
blessings.
bro?
Blessings. Hey, look, I just add a quick question. You've heard of the Book of Miracles?
Yes, Marianne Williamson, is it?
Yeah. Now, is that related to AA, or are these separate things entirely? I'm sorry, the Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles.
Course in Miracles. Yeah, it's. I'm not aware of any connection. That may be one, but I'm not aware of any.
Okay. All right. Because I came across a copy of that when I travels as a book dealer, and I thought about reading it, but haven't done it yet. But I think there's significant overlap. The ideas are very similar. The whole idea space of cleaning up your house, surrendering your bad self, that whole thing. But it's also done very anonymous, right? I don't think there's an actual author attributed to A Course in Miracles. It's just sort of presented as it's unauthored from some sort of foundation, which I think is similar to how AA is presented.
Well, I mean, Bill Wilson wrote the big book of AA. I mean, that's pretty well known.
Oh, okay. So, but they don't say,
So this is a book by Helen Schuchman. The underlying premise is the greatest miracle is the act of gaining a full awareness of love's presence in a person's life. And this book was dictated to her by Jesus Christ.
Okay. All right. So, but you have no personal experience with it.
I do. I live with a woman who was suicidal, and she took this course, and she was highly skeptical of it, but she knew that she needed to make some changes, and so she needed to get out of the house, and so she took this course. Seems just very Christian to me. It's not something I resonate with.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought it was worth discussing. I mean, I'm just worth inquiring about. But it's all over. Like addiction is all over. Like seems like everybody I know and talk to is dealing with some form of addiction or another. It's kind of depressing in a way. You see, Ralph is on the mend theoretically. You been following this?
No, what's going on with Ethan Ralph?
Well, he's trying to kick Xanax and all of his chemical issues, and he's trying to lose some weight, according to him. But his wife left him. Have you been following the drama?
No.
Yeah, I guess his wife and their infant. She ran off. Ralph moved to Mexico. He started living in Mexico because I guess the cost of living is a lot cheaper, and possibly dodge the troubles here in the States. So he up and left for Mexico with his wife and infant daughter, and was streaming from there for a good number of months, and then everything sort of seemed to have gone south a couple of weeks ago, and she left him. So the wife took the infant daughter back to the States and left Ralph all alone in Mexico. And so this was quite a blow to Ralph, and Ralph has seemed to taken this response from the world as a cue to start cleaning up his act a bit. So I followed something didn't come across on the feed.
I'm losing you. Are you doing
I'm in
something?
a park. Yeah, is it a bad
Okay.
connection? I'll call
Yeah,
back.
no, it's better now. It's better now, but you're just wandering off. So as an outsider to the 12 steps, do you find all this addiction talk, you find it depressing, off-putting? How else do you experience all this stuff?
That's a good question, because I used to experience it very negatively, because the people, like, in my early 20s, there was a considerable number of people I knew, they were doing some form of AA, and they were incredibly annoying about it. It was the feeling they wanted to talk to.
Yes.
And they wanted to loop me into it, and always accusing me of being in denial and all this kind of stuff. So there's a certain annoyance factor that accompanied it. And so I had a negative view of it.
That's crazy.
But
Why would anyone think that you're an alcoholic?
Well, the point is, at that period, I wasn't even drinking at all. I was completely abstemious in those days. But everyone was talking about their issues and their need for space, and talking about their needs, and I need this. And, there was this sort of stilted therapy language that accompanied them. And, it was like a lead balloon. Anytime anybody that was in recovery of some kind, you couldn't talk about alcohol, because that would be triggering to them. And there was this, it just was a giant obstacle. It just made me think that everybody was messed up. So, I don't know. But I guess it's done some good for some people, and you seem to swear by it. And I know a lot of people that go to it, but they take it as a joke. You know, they don't take it seriously, and they get no results from it. So I know there's one guy, he used to go to AA meetings and then just go drink with everybody that he met at AA. You know, it was completely farcical. You know, and you know, so you know, it's nothing to. It's not that was his problem, not necessarily AA's, but I think anything that pushes you towards like a good moral inventory has got to be positive. So I'm a fan now, I guess.
So overall, the net effect of 12 steppers in your life, has it been positive, negative, or you're not sure?
I'm not sure. It's mixed.
Yeah.
It's mixed. You know, it always comes to the person. You know, if somebody's sincere about it, I think he can get results. If someone's insincere about it, you know, they're not going to get results. There's no magic bullet, and there's no dodging the hard work. And I think only a certain percentage of people are willing to do the hard work.
And
Or
if you-
they, you know.
No, go ahead.
Well, and I think, and to sort of dovetail into what you say a lot, I think if people have a network of people that care about them and they care about, that is going to sort of decide whether or not they have the resolve to take it seriously. If they have their family or their friends or their, you know, who they're associated with, if they don't have strong bonds with them, they're not going to be as incentivized, and they're not going to take it as seriously.
Yeah. And do you have rules for life? Have you been composing your Elliott Blatt's rules for life? Maybe a pamphlet, if not a full book.
Yeah, I have a lot of rules for life.
Eat, love, pray.
So one is never a lender or borrower be.
That's good.
You know, that's from Shakespeare, bro. I'm a literate bro, dude. Yeah. So financial probity and conservatism is one cornerstone. Another cornerstone, as I mentioned last time, is hard work. Third, it would be choose your associations very meticulously and don't ignore early warning signs. You know, trust those early warning signs before you commit. That would be one rule for a third rule for life. Fourth would of course be clean your room. A fifth would be
your
eat lots of
toilet.
vegetables.
Toilet, clean your toilet, clean your bathroom, clean your kitchen. I assume keep everything clean.
Clean
Your
it
car.
all. Clean
it all.
Yeah, clean it all.
Okay.
I'd rather be cleaning. Why aren't you cleaning right now? You should always be asking yourself. In fact, you know, I got obsessive about cleaning my car in the past couple of weeks. I got all kinds of like professional products, and I'm like smearing them on the car and cleaning the wheels and the tires and the inside and the outside, the windshield, you know, really taking it a little bit too far. But there's a sort of satisfaction you get about having a clean car. I don't know if you've ever had that.
And where does no fap fit into your rules for life?
It's way at the bottom, bro.
Okay.
It's a rule. It's more like a suggestion.
So how is your selfishness hurting the lives of people around you?
How is it hurting the lives of people around me? I don't perceive myself as selfish. In all honesty, I honestly don't. So I'd be stretching, which isn't to say I'm not selfish. I am, but I don't know. Selfishness can be a judgment other selfish people place on you when they're trying to manipulate you, right? Do you agree?
Sure.
So, you know, I don't know how I don't, you know, I don't, it sounds, you know, conceited to say, but I don't really think I'm that selfish of a person. So, but yeah, I have been selfish, and, you know, I mean, I think I have the right balance between self-interest and group interest, bro.
Great. Great.
I mean,
that's not easy to attain.
obviously, there's going to be people out there that think otherwise, but they often, are pretty selfish themselves. You know what I mean by that? Like, someone can call you selfish as a way of getting them to do something for you, getting you to do something for them, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm very, and I've been bullied by that a lot in my life, and I've made a lot of poor decisions because of that type of influence. And so I have a lot of defensiveness around that charge. So, which is not to say it's not worth reflecting on. It definitely is. And I got terrible allergies.
So
Not my best.
where do you get your power to do the right things, the tough things, the hard things, the challenging things? Where do you get the power to do the tough things?
Where do I get my power? So, I mean, beyond the obvious.
Well, what's the
Fresh air,
obvious?
sunshine. And,
Fresh air, sunshine, vegetables, salads.
Salads, cotton sheets. The basics.
The basics.
I don't know. It's like you cultivate a philosophy over life. You learn things. You develop a code, a certain standard of conduct for yourself that you feel that you shouldn't fall beneath, and you sort of live up to your own standards for yourself. So, I guess that's where I get my quote unquote power, right?
Yeah, you're
If I'm understanding your question correctly,
yes.
Like the best quote, one of the best quotes I ever read, most impactful quotes I ever read, was like one of the Chinese classics, and it says something effective: "Life is alternating periods of action and reflection." Right?
Mm-hmm.
And which just seems simple enough, but both can be taken to extremes. If you don't have enough of one or the other, you'll suffer. So your reflection needs to be fed by your actions and your reflection upon your actions. And then your future actions need to be, fed and determined by your reflections about your previous actions. So I just sort of see life as an experiment with trying to balance reflection and action. And as silly as it says, and as simple as it says, it actually works. It just works for me, or it has worked for me to a certain extent.
And what's your latest kick?
Auto repair, Luke. I'm learning how to do basic repairs on my car, in addition to washing my car.
That's very masculine, bro.
Oh yeah, bro. It's a rush. It's a rush. I got like the socket set. Next thing I'm gonna get is a jack. I'm gonna be able to jack up my car and start doing stuff. Uh oh. Police action in the park, Luke. Did you hear that?
No, but there's a
exciting,
thin blue line, bro.
Yeah, we love our cops, our law enforcement. It's just happening right before us. Yeah, so that's my latest kick. Is I'm just trying to take care of the things in my life that I like, and one of them, which is my car, Luke. And every time that warning light comes on, I feel like I've been negligent, So I'm trying to overcompensate by taking preventive maintenance, doing things before problems arise. Really, like taking command of my transportation needs.
Mastering
That's
your
my latest kick.
domain. You're mastering your domain.
Yes, exactly. And my book business, Luke, it's thriving. I'm going to be in the 1% pretty soon if this keeps up.
Fantastic.
So I'm really thrilled with myself here. I had a long-term project. I said, I'm going to chip away at this, day by day, little by little, and just sort of, create a separate income stream for myself. And this has been a source of peace of mind for me. I don't feel as though I'm completely dependent on the winds of Silicon Valley Bank and things like that.
And do you still have your millions in Silicon Valley Bank?
No, I got him out just in time, bro.
Oh, thank God.
Luckily, I was like the last one in. I came in there with a wheelbarrow. I said, "Load it up, bro. I'm getting out of here." So
Wow.
I don't know. So anyway, Richard, I don't know. He's really getting on my nerves. I'm going to pull the plug. I listened to that piece you played this morning. It just seems like sour grapes. Like Richard is never happy with anybody. You ever notice that? He never praises anybody. They're never quite up to snuff in Richard's world, No matter how successful, basically, a galaxy star like Tucker Carlson just doesn't quite cut it for Richard, He's just not on with the Apollo anymore. He's just, doesn't have quite the right position here or there, It's just such an annoying habit. I just wonder if he's aware of that. That's how he comes off sometimes.
I mean, I think it makes him entertaining because he's just, he's just going to trash everybody else on the right.
Yeah, and I'm sure he doesn't even identify the right. He's sort of at war with the right writ large. I think he's solidly. No, he doesn't identify as a liberal either. He's just.
He's an
he's very slippery.
Apolloist.
Yeah, and he doesn't quite define what that means, or I don't know, bro. I think it's Team Chuck. See how I'm gonna ride with Team Chuck for a while, see what happens.
I don't know what could possibly go wrong.
What could go wrong? All right, Luke. That's all I got. Man. Just a quickie one. All right.
Thank you.
All right, it's a little afternoon delight, bro.
Thanks. I'm very appreciative.
And I respect that she takes care of her child. Yes. But just do the dishes. Because they're not my dishes.
So when they're not done and you walk in, what happens? What do you do then? So that's the second column.
Well,
so you walk in, I get what's upsetting you now.
Right.
You told her that this is important to me. She's not doing it. Is it all the time she's not doing it or most of the time?
It's most of the time. Well, I'd say it's all the time. She only does it if I text her ahead of time and tell her. And like my whole point is, why do I have to fucking text you ahead of time to tell you to do the fucking dishes?
That's the second part that upsets you. All right, I got it. So now let's go to that next column. So what happens when you walk in, you see the dishes aren't done? What do you do? What's the first thing you do?
Well, I have two options, right? I lose my shit.
Yeah.
Which I don't want to.
Right.
Which turns into probably me out of the apartment. Right.
I mean, she put you out of the apartment?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's happened before.
Right.
Or I just shut off.
How do you shut off? What do you do?
I'd sit on the couch.
You sit on the couch. What do you do while you're on the couch? What?
This is embarrassing. I sit on the couch and I play Angry Birds.
Angry Birds?
Yeah.
Well, how fitting that is, isn't it? I mean, playing Angry Birds.
I play Angry Birds. Yeah.
And then what happens? You're on the couch playing Angry Birds?
Well, I'd fucking shut off, man. I don't like.
So she'll
I don't want.
she'll say,
yeah, because what she does is she wants to tell me about her day and tell me all the shit, and all I can fucking think about is she didn't do the fucking dishes.
Right.
So I don't care. You need money for this. You want money for the car insurance. Great. Do the fucking dishes. Do your part.
So you just cut off. You just emotionally shut down, distance yourself.
Yeah, because the other way doesn't work right now.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, yeah, blowing up.
And I don't have control.
The truth is that they're not very dissimilar, right? They're really opposite sides of the same coin. Don't worry about that right now. Okay. We'll get to that some other point.
All right.
So then this is the important thing. So the rule you have, the unenforceable rule is that you demand that she does those dishes. Right? That's your rule. So would this be safe to say? You'd say it this way: if you loved me, you would do the dishes. Right?
Yeah.
If you love me,
Yeah.
you'd do the dishes.
Yeah.
If you love me, you'd
Yeah.
respect some of what I want.
I asked one thing, so yeah.
One thing, right? And you sound like you make it a small thing because I want to say to you, that's not a small thing. You're asking her a lot, and I'll explain what I mean by that later. And I know that like you're going, what do you mean? What are you talking? It's just one thing. No,
yeah, like I'm thinking
it's a lot. You
okay.
want her to do the dishes every day, regardless of what's going on in her life. And see, that's what I mean. You're not asking for her a small thing. You're asking her to totally disregard what's important for her and to pay attention to what's important to you. See, that's the rule. Right.
Okay,
let's go a little farther with it, though. See, so then what you're saying is the dependency now that you have is that your love for her and your good feelings for her are dependent on her doing what you want her to do. See, that's what you're setting up here. And so there's no possibility, you're not creating any possibility outside of this demand for her to be connected to you. So you're saying if we have the relationship on my terms, then we're okay. But if you're not going to meet me on my terms, then hell with you. And you throw her away. I mean, you act like she's throwing you away, but I'll tell you, man, you're throwing her away.
Well, it kind of feels like she is.
Of course you do, because your demand is that she's supposed to do this. All right, look, here's the real important thing. What do you think makes those dishes so important? What's that really about? What happens when you see those dishes? What does that trigger in you, man? That's got to connect to something.
Well, okay. My mom, when I was a kid, I come home from school, and I would judge the night based on if the dishes were in the sink or not.
And if they were in the sink, what would happen that night?
If the dishes were in the sink, it meant that my mom was drinking that night.
And what was going to happen that night if mom was drinking?
Nothing good.
What does nothing good mean, Andrew?
She's just fucking angry, man. She was just angry. She'd have guys over I'd never seen before. I didn't eat. She'd come in my room and yell at me. Sometimes she let the guys do stupid shit to me, I guess.
Wow. You weren't safe if you saw the dishes in the sink, were you?
No.
That somehow when you come home and those dishes aren't done, all of this stuff with your mom is right there again, man.
Mm-hmm.
See, a lot of times what happens is that we demand that our future reverse the experiences of our past. But it doesn't work that way. See, what we need to do, we could start it right now, but it's going to take a lot of this. You got a lot to say to your mom. We got a lot of stuff to work through with your mom. And that's not going to go away by demanding your wife do the dishes, man. That's going to go away by you opening up a lot of this pain, which is, I see how hard it is for you. I understand that. But when you keep avoiding it, you keep doing these other things, you're not doing yourself, you're not doing your marriage a favor at all.
No, I'm not.
Okay, that's Alan Berger, psychologist. He's written a lot of books on recovery. About to send an invite over to Dooovid. So let me get to that. Hang on.
Free Epstein.
We know how much Bill Gates cares about children. He met and traveled with Jeffrey Epstein many times after Epstein's convicted sex crimes. The Gates Foundation had a huge influence over the COVID response fiasco. The Gates Foundation may be the largest single donor to the dark money machine.
Our managers should not treat shareholders' money as their own. They should treat it as shareholders' money.
Whoa. Well, that's what we in the speaking business call an early lunch. This guy wasn't just kicked out of the shareholder meeting. He was actually arrested. So if you're following at home, you fly to Epstein Island, nothing happens to you. You talk about Epstein Island, you end up in cuffs. Coming up. Hiccups, old dad.
Okay, don't talk about Epstein Island. The Trump town hall on CNN is getting started in 5 minutes. We'll keep an eye on that, see if there's anything that we should play from the town hall. All right, here is Richard Spencer on Tucker Carlson's second act. Richard predicts Tucker's second act will be his slide into irrelevancy.
Going to a man's house. It was his ranch out in Texas. And he was one of these right-winger types, and someone connected me with him. This was many years ago, I think 10 or 12 years ago. And it's like, oh, this guy will fund what you're doing. And needless to say, he didn't. We were just going off in completely different directions. I was not doing what he wanted. But anyway, I visited with him, and he's a very wealthy guy. And, you know, Fox News, I can just remember, was playing in the background throughout this large house. So it was like Fox News was...
Okay, Dooovid, you've been in the chat. Anything that you've seen on the show so far today that you'd like to comment on?
Well, the self-improvement, the Berger, we could talk about. I was thinking that watching, the commenting on the news, and I think, like, my mom, she's getting old, so she's at the point where she writes notes. She writes things down to help her remember. So, like, I do things, and she, I like just writes a bunch of notes. I'll come in, and she'll have a bunch of notes, and I'll just do them. A lot of times they're small things, but just so that she remembers, she writes them down. And then I guess my dad gets home from work, and so she writes down, like, news stories that she's interested to tell him. And it's kind of like sports, like just like commenting. And I was thinking, God forbid, this guy Andrew Wilson got strikes on YouTube, so he's got like a backup channel now. I think he's got 2 strikes, and so he was over 10,000 views, and he was making maybe even hundreds of dollars of super chats a night. But he was like talking trash and picking fights with other streamers, and got a strike. So now he's got a backup channel. And he's just got over 1,000, trying to get monetized, and trying to convince people to donate money to him other ways. And I guess he had a little beef with me. So he was on Lucas Gage, and I mentioned, like, we'll call it like the Destiny model streaming, where like you saw, I got my clip that Destiny played a clip of me, although he didn't know who I was, and you didn't help my subs or anything. But like the streaming model, where you get a big appearance, you get a bunch of subs, you get monetized, and then you just comment on other people's clips or news, and get paid. And people show you clips in the chat, like Brittany from Politically Provoked on Cozy TV now for a long time. They're making a living, and basically all they do is comment on news, other content, and people in the chat will pay them to play content and comment on it. So it's I think it's an interesting streaming model, although generally doesn't interest me that much, because I was just thinking that much, like, I mean, maybe like news, like I read the New York Times, reading is a better way of ascertaining information. And then kind of like, well, what do you think about all these things happening? Um, I think generally it's a waste. It doesn't matter what people are thinking about these subjects. So like I try to avoid it, although I think it makes me a difficult personality, because it's what most people talk about. And I mean, reality, most people talk like about sports, or so not to pick on Elliott or something, but you're thinking like, okay, so typical. Okay, you talk about a person, so like, well, what's going on? So like, oh, did you hear about Ethan Ralph? And it's like, well, why the hell would I care about Ethan Ralph? Or even like Richard Spencer, like, and and then you think, well, did you hear about the news? Did you hear about Trump, or this thing? And you think, well, why the hell would I even care about Trump? And I guess that's kind of my attitude. So it makes it unfortunate, because that's what most people talk about. So I got to be kind of like unpleasant, where I'm like, that stuff just doesn't interest me, and then you got to pretend like it interests you just to be social or have friends. And but I mean, we can move into the self-help. And then I was thinking, like, because I was in yeshivas and Torah and Judaism, and like the Torah approach to self-help versus kind of the popular approach to self-help versus academic psychology, versus just understanding why people do things that is not necessarily within the field of clinical psychology, of actually trying to help people. So those are
Okay,
just,
now what was the point about your mother and the news that you started off with?
well, that right when my dad gets home, she wants to tell her all these things that happen. I think that's pretty normal. And and saying, God forbid, like, her memory's not as strong as it used to be, so she even has to like write it down, so that when my dad comes home, she's got like a whole page of just like random news things that she wants to tell my dad. And like, okay, that keeps their relationship together, they have a conversation. And but God forbid, my parents aren't really into self-improvement. And so as opposed to talking about like self-improvement or something like that, they talk about the news. And I was mentioning in the chat, very few people are into self-improvement. I would say even like less than 1 out of 10. And even among like Chabad Judaism, where like the whole Chabad thing is like, like Tanya is about like, self-improvement and constantly being in self-improvement. Like I think the minority of Chabadsters are into self-improvement. And it usually just irritates and bothers people. And so you have self-improvement usually among people at a low point in their life, like former criminals, drug addicts, people suffering addiction, low earning, where they're just in a rut and like, I have to pull myself together, I will do anything to make myself better. And then they'll get on a path of self-improvement, usually just for a brief period of time. But like that's what I loved about Judaism. And the theoretically, like, life is continuous self-improvement, like even thinking of the dishes, I remember the rabbis and thank God even in my youth, like before I was 20, it's like laziness is an enemy to be defeated. If there's something to be done, get up and do it. Now, and like now is the best time. And like the mitzvah, what's the most important mitzvah? The one in front of you, and the uh, path of the just. The first thing is alacrity, zeal, and just basic. If there's something worth doing, now is the best time. And like I used to say that to people is like just like repent, start now. Saying there's no better time than now. And it's kind of annoying. So like when I was Hasidic, I'd go to rabbis and that's all they talk about. And the people who go to those type rabbis are into that kind of things. But I think in reality, most people find like that annoying. And I'm not sure if you're like that too, where you're just like or you find, or you're the opposite. You find it annoying, where you're just like stop trying to encourage me. Stop trying to tell me what to do, or I don't want to be on your self improvement journey. I'm happy with the way I am.
Well, nobody likes to be told what to do, and so I'm with the majority there. I don't like to be told what to do. You don't like to be told what to do. Virtually nobody wants to be told what to do. So if self-improvement is going to have some meaning, it's the individual with his own life. It's not telling everyone else what to do. You're just going to tick people off, and you're not going to do any good if you're telling other people what they need to do.
Well, no, I would disagree. I'd say like I think in levels of expertise, like you take instruction, and so like you want to learn something new, you just take instruction. You find someone who knows what they're doing, and you do what they tell you. And learning a new skill is constantly just taking instruction. It means humbling yourself and saying, I don't know, and therefore I'm going to someone who knows, and I will take instruction and do what they tell me. And like as like an engineer, technical computer stuff, it's pretty common that like I'll be listening to somebody for even long periods of time where they're just telling me what to do. And like even in employment, I said like no one ever listens to me except for rare like employment situations where I'm explaining something technical. And then in that cases, like people might even listen to me for hours because they they're not really listening to me. They just want to understand how to do something, and you think that I know how to do it, so will listen to me. So I don't know if you agree. Like, I mean, you did the Alexander technique. People pay you, and presumably, like they just listen to you and take instruction because they think what you're teaching them has value. So it'd just be mostly you giving them instruction and them listening, right?
Yeah, but that's when people seek it out. So you were presenting it as nobody wants to be nudged and bothered and hassled and criticized. If people seek out instruction or nudging or criticism, that's a whole different thing than it being unsolicited. So most people don't care for unsolicited advice. But if you have someone that you respect or someone that you're paying, then you're going to listen. But other than that, most people aren't going to welcome criticism. So there's a big difference between those two states.
Well, definitely an agreement, but I mean, maybe to push you on that, how much of your life is soliciting instruction?
Oh, not much. I don't know, maybe 1%, 2%.
When we talked about learning Hebrew or something, like, so that was something, it was important to you. You solicited instruction. You were even willing to sit with little kids. But I mean, do you think that's a negative thing? You think what would your life be like if 10% of your life was soliciting instruction?
I don't have unlimited stores of energy and desire to change. It's limited. So I can't imagine 10%. Well, I can only imagine it in a job context. So yeah, for a job, I'd want to solicit, say, instruction from a supervisor or from a particularly important client, but just willy-nilly soliciting instructions from people as I go through life, no. But what's your attitude to instruction and criticism?
Yeah, I would say maybe 10% of my life is soliciting instruction, even if it's like, you mean formal, where I'm just watching explanatory videos where I'm not actually being face to face instructed. Um, my father constantly is like giving me instruction. He's got a lot of gadgets or skills, and like explaining to me exactly how it should be done, and like his new speaker equipment, and like I have to listen to the instruction and follow exactly the rules until I could touch it, or commit more engineering. It's pretty common, and then I work with computer software, so like I'm assuming just for like your streaming, your technical stuff, you probably solicited instruction for all of your streaming technical stuff at some point.
Yes, I mean, going on YouTube, watching a video or seeking instructions on how to do something is very different than a friend or an acquaintance in your life, badgering you to do something that you don't want to do.
Well, if it's like, so if it's self-improvement, to say, well, you want to be a better person, right? And some, if it's nagging, like, okay, so like I saw my mother and I see her regularly and she's a nagger, and a lot of people in the Jewish community are generally naggers, and sometimes it's positive, like you like, okay, like, did you pay your taxes? So like my mom nagged me until I paid my taxes, and I paid my taxes pretty early. Like this year, my taxes were paid by mid-February, um, or like the dishes or something, like like, well, now would be the right time. So like nag until it gets done if you have a roommate or something like that, or a job type thing, where generally things that have a like a deadline, a to-do list, I try to do them as soon as possible, um, right away. And so I'm not, yeah, there's level, like no one likes to be nudged or like insulted or told what to do, but it depends in what context. So like, and I'm not even sure that I have that much of it, but I mean, in terms of like instruction, like I listen to the Great Courses Teaching Company every day. I basically listen to all their content, and I constantly listen to how-to stuff. And like, okay, like I maintain a house, I do property management. Um, there's new skills. Like sometimes you're constantly paying people to do things, like Elliott, like car repair, and I'm constantly teaching myself how to do things. And usually I will just solicit pure instruction, most of the time just like videos. But if it's if I pay for it, or a friend relationship, where the friendship relationship is basically giving and receiving instruction, even in terms of like our relationship, if you said like that, where like if you have something useful, you'll give me instruction, I will listen. I have something useful, I will give you instruction and you will listen. And I mean, that's actually the kind of friendships I prefer. But I'm kind of like a self-improvement addict like that.
Yeah, I used to be a self-improvement addict, but I found it just didn't really work. Didn't get down to the nuts and bolts of things. It didn't get down to core character transformation. One has to, in my experience, transcend the self and move into a different realm, the spiritual realm that's no longer about the self, but it's about transcending the self. So I'm just curious, do you view your problems as your primary problems, or my perspective is my problems are simply symptoms of much deeper, more painful problems that I don't want to look at? So do you think that you have a good handle on your problems, or are you like me? Do you think that your problems are simply symbols and symptoms of much deeper issues that you don't want to look at?
Well, I mean, this is the main thing, like hopefully we'll talk about, but just to close the chapter, when it's saying like personality refinement is different than technical instruction, or like like health, or something that is more not esoteric. So most of the instruction I receive is technical. Like I know how to operate hundreds of different computer programs, or tools or devices, or understanding chemical or scientific processes. So most of the instruction I receive is technical. So like if we're switching to, referring self-improvement, you're talking about the self personality refinement. Yeah, I don't really receive any instruction in that. Like I listen to videos, like, we talk, I listen to the stuff you said, I read books on that, but no, I don't really receive any instruction on personality refinement. I was referring almost all to technical instruction, your personal know-how, and so I don't know if you had a point, or to differentiate those two things from personality refinement, becoming a better person, the self, as opposed to technical know-how.
Well, I've said nothing on the show about seeking out technical know-how. I just take that for granted. The entire point of this show and many of my other shows is the transcending of the self, or the development of character. It's not about, obviously, if you need technical know-how, you go out and get it. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, okay. When I was saying I like 10% of my life is receiving instruction, the majority of that is technical, not. So like I do listen to, I almost listen to no self-help. Most of the stuff I listen to is academic, and I find self-help stuff very unuseful because self-improvement is not necessarily technical. It's not a real science. The subject interests me, and from any perspective, but in the terms of I would say it's different than technical know-how, where instruction is very useful, and as someone who teaches people how to do things, most people just can't sit and listen. So like I spent years, and I think we've talked about this, where I taught people how to operate computer equipment, and I was like, well, if you just shut up and listen and do what I say, I'll teach you in like 10 minutes. But if whatever, it could take 10 hours. And if you're getting paid or something, it might take 10 hours like that. So like, I remember Purge of Entropy, like Lowell Gallon, we tried to get him, like Charles Moskowitz, he still can't get his tech right. And because he really just, to some extent, can't shut up and listen to, just like, do this, then do this, then do this, and then do that. And if this happens, do this, or something like that. So, I mean, maybe you're more prone to receiving technical instruction, or if you agree with my point with a lot of these things, like if you just shut up and listen, it'll take a few minutes. If you don't shut up and listen, it'll take as long as it takes for you to shut up and listen.
Yeah, I have no interest in technical instruction that as far as this show or past shows. I never talk about that topic. I take it for granted that when it comes to technical things, you should get instructed, but that's not the topic of this stream. So once again, I'll pose my question to you. So do you view your problems as your primary problems, or do you view your problems as primarily symptoms of more painful things that you don't want to look at?
Well, usually like motivation. So if you get back, like, okay, like marijuana or something like that. And so, it's like, you got to stop smoking marijuana. It's bad for you. You want to pull yourself together. Feel like, I mean, basically, like, you've harped on me. I mean, not like harping in a way that was annoying, but almost every time we've talked for the whole time we've met, like you've mentioned, marijuana, and presumably from your perspective, you're just like, dude, like, why are you smoking marijuana? You got to kick that. It's not good for you. And in that respect, like, okay, I accepted that if it got annoying, and I can't stop it. So, like my primary problems, if you mean like internal, I'm not sure I agree with this, how you're going to phrase it. Like, what does it mean to have an internal problem? What does it mean to fix it? It's like, if I have trauma, I have issues, I have an identity, and my problem is my identity, and my identity can't be changed. And so my identity is problematic and causes me unsuccessful relations with other people, and that causes me depression. Therefore, I smoke marijuana. In the sense, well, you're saying like, well, the problem is you. The problem is like, you're a bad person, and you either got to change and become a new person, or God forbid. I don't know. How are you looking at this? How are you phrasing it in that sense?
Okay, so I'll just talk about myself. And so up until about I think 2016, I never earned over $45,000 in a year. Like, I had a life time of under-earning, underachieving, and self-sabotaging, and I've been carrying over $50,000 in credit card debt for approximately 6 years at that point. And so my under-earning was not the problem. My under-earning was a symptom of a much deeper problem, and that is my tendency to be a selfish, self-centered person who is not really interested in being of much service to anybody. So when I recognized that my under-earning was just a symptom of a very, selfish, self-centered life, I was willing to go through the pain of reconstructing myself from the inside, so that I started, paying more attention to other people and to what they need. And as I went through that reconstruction of myself, I then became a better employee, and I became more prosperous, and I started coming out of the cave with some of my talents, and I started making more money. But the money and the earning and the paying off the credit card debt, that was just a symptom of what was a much deeper problem, and the deeper problem being I was incredibly selfish. So another example, I've never had a romantic relationship for longer than a year. So there's the problem, but the problem is just a symbol of a deeper problem with how I relate to myself and to other people. So my selfishness and my desire to, say, escape the humdrum nature of my reality into, intense romantic and sexual interludes has not predisposed me, has not placed me in a position to sustain relationships. So the lack of relationships is just a symptom and a symbol of a much deeper problem, the much deeper problem being that I have wanted to escape reality, escape from my life and get lost in very exciting erotic and romantic adventures. So those are two examples of symptoms of problems, symbols of problems, but the real problem was something much, much deeper that I didn't want to look at, and that was a reordering of my soul, so to speak. So anything you want to comment on?
Yeah, thanks for saying it like that, because I guess that's where I'm differentiating from Berger. If we put it in the harsh terms, the problem is I'm a bad person. The problem is that I'm selfish. And we're like, well, the true self, when I accurately looked in the mirror and I saw I'm a bad person, and the level to say that is my true self, but I could change. I want to change. I want to be a good person. I'm willing to do the hard work to change so that I'm not this bad person that I currently am. And it's very difficult. So to say, okay, I'm going to smoke weed because, God forbid, I'm a horrible person and I don't think I could change. So I'm just going to smoke weed to kill the pain, versus, this recognition, God forbid, that I have these problems, but I see a path forward to changing. I'm not sure if the Berger was mentioning these things like the true self and the false self, and theologically, said the Tanya of the Judaic, said, well, of course, there's the battle between the body and the soul, and the natural, human is an animal, ignorance is the natural condition. So to recognize that, I'm no different than any other beast, and the only thing that's going to make me different from being the natural beast that I am is character refinement, and therefore I'm constantly trying to refine my character. And from the Judeo perspective, to say that there's an ideal behavior pattern, like the halakha, the proper character trait, and then there's the natural tendency. And the goal of character refinement is not the true self, because the true self is actually the selfish, horrible animal. And so the goal is to fight that selfish, horrible animal and align yourself with proper behavior. And that was my understanding of the Musser school, the Judaic Musser school perspective on that. There's this battle against the true self, which is negative, and trying to align ourselves with proper behavior, and that'd be more theological if you're talking in terms of your practical, in terms of unleashing your earning potential or relations. And actually, I wanted to ask you, maybe also move the direction towards that, the difference between Judaic Musser and self-help, which
Well, both of them were absolutely useless for me. Judaic Musa and self-help, absolutely useless for me in overcoming my underearning. I needed a fundamental reordering of myself on a spiritual level, on a character level. I needed the transformation that I've only experienced in working the 12 steps. So self-help and Judaic teachings were completely useless for me in overcoming my habitual habits of selfishness and self-aggrandizement. So you talked about using Judaic Musa. How's that worked out for you?
I think it worked out pretty good. I think like relatively, I did this stuff in my early 20s, my late teens, and like we were talking yesterday, like I say Kriya Shema Shalmita, I repent every night. I almost never carry on anger or grudges towards other people. I almost always blame my failings on myself. And generally, I recognize faults in myself and will, within your realistic goals, try to change those. And like I got that from Musser, and I had to be in Israel outside, like where I was, in yeshiva, I was in Jerusalem, there to like, so to say, the Christian terminology, be born again, to become a new person. And then I went to Brooklyn and became a Hasidic Jew, which to some extent was a false identity. I became Dooovid because that allowed me to be like Dooovid, the Hasidic Jew who believes in all this mysticism things and works on myself. And I did extremities, like I slept on benches, I gave away all my money. I recognized young, like I remember thinking very clearly that like I'm like you were saying, I'm an extremely selfish, not nice person, maybe even on the negative side in my youth, to having enjoyment and seeing the pain of others, to try to become a good person. And under the guise of extremist Hasidic rabbis and rabbis, I did extreme things to try to become a good person. And I think it worked to a relatively good extent. I'm very charitable. I'm very careful not to hurt other people's feelings, even though, like, generally I was a pretty nasty kid.
And where do you get the power to do the things that you need to do, but that you don't want to do?
I think it has to be fear of God. And, it's an important principle also, like the religious aspect. I think some people included like the six duties of the heart, the six mitzvahs that are constant upon your heart. And one of them be like